I'm the chairman of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission. I'd like to welcome everybody here. I have a good crowd today, and I won't even try to start mentioning folks because I'm sure I'll miss somebody. But today is our committee day, the first day of our May meeting, and so the committee members will be discussing and voting today. Then tomorrow is the full commission, and we'll again discuss, possibly amend what's been voted on today, and then make the final votes tomorrow. So we have a lot of folks here from the public. Looking forward to hearing from you. And so is our usual policy, if you'd please step to the microphone, state your name, where you're from, and if you represent any type of club or organization. And everyone has 3 minutes to speak. At 2 minutes, Danette will say 1 minute remaining, and then at the end of the 3 minutes, you'll say time has expired. And since we have, I'm sure, a lot of folks that want to speak, if we could have the next guy on deck to come up and be ready to speak as soon as that speaker is done. So with that, Danette, if you please call the roll.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Connie King.
Here.
Kent Woods.
Here.
James Stroud.
Here.
Angie Box.
Here.
Jamie Woodson.
Here.
Tony Sanders.
Here.
Bill Swan. Dennis Gardner.
Here.
Chad Baker.
Here.
Brian McLaren.
Here.
Kurt Holbert. Jeff Cook.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Danette. And I know we have a lot to do today, but I'd like to just take a couple of minutes and just kind of speak to how did we get to where we are today and where are we going. So this all starts with many months ago with the agency on a regional level to start to discuss issues that they would like to have discussed. And then it's over many meetings, over countless hours, they come to a conclusion of this is what we would like to recommend for season setting. That's much of the science-based part of this discussion. You know, they have all the data from years past and current data, and that's where the science comes into. Of course, public opinion matters in that as well, but that's kind of the science part. Then we come to the public opinion part, and of course that's the hardest part because, you know, we all have our own opinions, and you know, we know what's good for us at our property, our RWMA, or where we like to hunt and fish, and we duck hunters are the worst. You know, if somebody has better corn, better ducks, better weather, we've got to fix something, you know. So we all have our opinions, but of course our job here on the commission is to try to not have that bias as best we can and try to satisfy the most people we possibly can, which is not easy. So that's what we're attempting to do. Within that, you know, what do we do with the data and the public opinion? It basically falls into several different categories. So if it's something detrimental to the wildlife, or if it is a public safety issue, then it just will not pass. We're not going to do that. Then it comes to the public opinion part, and again, that's the difficult part of it. We know that we're not going to make everyone happy. We're going to do the best we can. There'll be some that are, you know, unhappy. Hopefully we can hit neutral or happy. That's what we're looking for. The final part is the budget part, and so quickly the agency is funded through license sales. That's approximately 50% of the revenue. The rest is, most of the rest is the Pittman-Robertson money, and that's from excise taxes on hunting and fishing gear that the federal government collects, and then they distribute it based on license sales. So the vast majority of the budget from the agency is license sales. The legislature was very good to us last year, and now we get fuel tax from marine fuel, so that helps as well. And then the final part is the wetlands fund, and that's something that possibly the general public also contributes, but most of the money does not come from the general fund of the state of Tennessee, mainly from predominantly license sales. So we also take into account that the folks who are paying for this certainly have some deferential treatment. So those are kind of the parameters we use. We hope we get it right. Sometimes we don't. And I remember Jeff Fisher was interviewed one time and said, well, Coach, why'd you throw the ball from the 1 yard line? You could have run it. He goes, I threw the ball because I thought we'd score a touchdown if I threw the ball. So, you know, we make decisions because we think it's going to work. Sometimes it doesn't, and we have to review it and maybe change it. So that's just common. Before I came on the commission, you know, I wasn't exactly sure what parameters were considered, and just want everybody to understand where we're coming from. So thanks for listening to my dissertation there. I'd like to turn it over now to Director Carter. We have a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. And we do have a lot of people here today, and really appreciate the participation for everybody that's shown up. I know we have people standing, so I would just ask you if you'd like to sit down, we'll have our staff members raise their hand and pick out the youngest one first and just tap them on the shoulder, and they'd be glad to give their seat up to you. I'm serious about that. If you'd like a place to sit, they'd be glad to do that. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the few moments here to begin with. You talked about how we get to where we are today and leadership throughout the agency. It's always a mixed emotion for me from some of the folks who have worked here for so many years and provided that kind of leadership and that kind of guidance, who've decided that they're going to go on to another career, that being retirement for most folks. And today, that's the case we have with John Mayer. John was still is, the longtime manager in Region 3, and he's decided that June the 30th would be his last day with the agency, be retiring after 34 years. John came to work in March of 1984. So we don't have a commission meeting, obviously, next month, so we asked him to come today so that we could properly honor John before you all and before the public for all the things that he's done. He's here today with his wife, Cindy. He also has 2 sons and 2 grandkids. They both live out of state, so they weren't able to be here with him today. But John actually was born in Washington, D.C., grew up most of his life in Virginia, and decided that he wanted to get into the wildlife side of things and came to Tennessee Tech. And after he went to Tennessee Tech, he earned his bachelor's there, of course, in wildlife and fisheries, and went on to get his master's degree at Tennessee Tech in both the wildlife and the fisheries side. And then after as a part of his graduate work, he actually did his field research on turkeys at Cheatham Wildlife Management Area. So that's been a few years ago, and for a guy that really wanted to do fisheries work, it was kind of an odd start, but as John says, you know, if they offer you a job, you take it. So that's what he was doing, and he did that for a number of years. He went on to Region 3, of course, and he's been both a fisheries tech, a streams manager, regional cold water fisheries manager, assistant regional manager, and I just mentioned, of course, regional manager. And John's not only been a leader across his region, but across the state. And this year he was presented the Lifetime Achievement Award by the state chapter of the American Fisheries Society, which attests to his leadership not only here, but throughout several other organizations and other honors that he's received from the agency and those people as well. We'll miss his leadership, obviously, and the fellowship that he's provided on such a genuine level and everything we've been accustomed to working with John on. So we are, like I said, happy and sad at the same time for John to be leaving us, but we did want to present him, Mr. Chairman, if you'd join me, please. Probably because some of y'all's eyes are as bad as mine, I'll just read this to you. It simply says, Appreciation Award presented to John Mayer for 34 years of faithful and dedicated service from your friends at the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. It doesn't have all of his name tags on there, but it also has the ones most recent is John Mayer, the Wildlife Manager, Fisheries Biologist, Assistant Regional Manager, and of course John was commissioned as well, so has both of his badges on the plaque as well. So John, from all of us, we really appreciate all you've done, and we'd like to present this to you on behalf of the Commission and the agency and all your friends inside and outside this workforce.
Thank you very much.
Seems like we have this happening a lot recently, but as we've said before, this is a great day for John and Cindy, but tough day for the agency. But thank you for all you've done for so many years. Are there any announcements from the Commission? Chairman Holbert, for the Wildlife Committee, good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the well wishes. All right, first off, I just want to thank everybody for coming today. A lot of members of the public, from young to old, and I appreciate each one of you coming. I think so many times people misinterpret the importance of sharing your opinion or an email or a phone call, but I hope some of you were surprised to find out that we do actually answer our phones. A lot of you found out call early in the morning. So anyway, I do appreciate each email, phone call that came my way. I know that we won't agree on everything, as Mr. Chairman or Chairman Cook said, but we will do our best to do what's best for the resource in the state of Tennessee. I know there's several members of the public here that would like to comment today. When it comes that time, if you will direct your questions or comments to me instead of the agency personnel or another commissioner, if you will address your question to me, the chairman of the committee, I'll take care of it. It is a committee meeting. The only people that can make amendments or motions or anything will be members of the Wildlife Committee. That'll be the ones that are having the discussion today. Tomorrow will be the full commission where everybody will be able to comment on it or make amendments, whatever they choose to do. I think that's it. And without further ado, I'm going to call on our Assistant Chief of Wildlife and Forestry, Mr. Chuck Yost.
Good afternoon. I've got kind of a non-traditional start today. I had a special request from an anonymous commissioner that I have an icebreaker. And the icebreaker is trivia. Is true or false, is this WMA located in Tennessee?
Well,
And I'm not exactly sure who I should defer to at this point, but Commissioner Box maybe is, or maybe Commissioner Holbert for a response.
Maybe Commissioner Holbert would be better at this point.
that would be false.
False, okay. All right, you guys are
We
good.
did drive around 30 minutes trying to figure out where we were. But I won't say what commissioner sent us this map, but I'm pretty sure you can all tell.
Well, it wouldn't have been fair to not have a photo credit at the bottom, so.
They kind of gave me one.
With that said, since everybody else is wondering what in the world's going on, I'll move on. The purpose of this presentation is to present agency recommendations for the 2018-19 and 2019 and 20 hunting seasons. As you'll recall, staff previewed these in April, and we are now here today to seek approval. The second public comment period was fairly quiet. That's the time between the April commission meeting and now. The agency received comments from 88 members of the public, and you'll recall that there were over 1,300 during the initial comment period. And I have provided a summary of these comments for you today. They should be there at your stations. And they provide an overall summary, and then a summary specific to white-tailed deer is the second page. So what you are about to hear are the recommended changes. Therefore, if a recommendation is not made on a particular subject, it is safe to assume that there's no change being proposed for it. We will cover recommendations regarding falconry, big game, WMA, and then National Wildlife Refuges. And at the end of each portion of the presentation, we will ask the Wildlife Committee Chair to take the appropriate action. In just a moment, I'll introduce Jamie Fedderson to address the proclamations regarding falconry. After that, there will be a host of speakers to present on the remaining proclamations. At the end of the big game presentations, I will come back up to the podium before we move forward into the WMA proclamation. And we will defer to the Boating and Law Enforcement Committee for Manner and Means for topics such as tagging, weapon types, etc. So Jamie, if you don't mind, come forward and kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to start with the most controversial issues first, so we're going to be talking about statewide seasons for hunting with raptors. And as you recall, last time we just wanted to let you know that we're going to be repealing Proclamation 91-15. We're going to include the take of raptors in manner and means, which you'll hear from our law enforcement later on. We're shoring up some season dates and bag limits. We're making generic language where appropriate. And we've extended some seasons on some migratory game bird species. And we'll make sure that we advertise all these in our hunting guide and on our website. Real quickly, we're talking about Proclamation 18-02. We've got some, this is all brand new language for the proclamation, and it just sets out dates for all these species. And we've expanded a few. We've included rails and moorhens and gallinules, woodcock, snipe. These were not previously included in our raptor seasons. Just again, this is all new language for our duck seasons. And then we're also addressing raptor hunting in Proclamation 1803, the Furbearer Proclamation, and pretty much everything stays the same in that, except we did add some new language for bobcat and raccoon, and changing some language for the opening and closing dates and the daily bag limits. And we're also proposing adding this language to the Proclamation 18-04 for small game. There's no new language here. This is all language that existed in the Proclamation 91-15. So no changes here, but it's in here just for housekeeping. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion for approval of Proclamation 1802? Yes. I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussion? Any questions from a member of the public? All right. If not, all in favor of Proclamation 1802, let it be known by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Jamie.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to let you know that you're also going to be voting on Proclamation 1804 at this point. We don't have any addition to that. And 1803, we're going to hold off until Roger Applegate talks to you. He's got some other changes for the Furbearer stuff. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Holding off on 1803 till?
It'll just, Roger Applegate's going to be coming up right now
Okay.
as soon as I'm done, and
Okay.
he's got some
We're just going
things
to
to
get
talk
both
about.
of his while he's up here.
Right.
Gotcha, thanks.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah. So, Commissioners, I'd also we'd like to recommend passage of Proclamation 1804, statewide small game hunting seasons and bag limits.
Have a motion? Have a second? All right, I've got a motion and a second for passage of Proclamation 18-04. Is there any discussions or questions? Any questions from the public? All right. All in favor of Proclamation 18-04, let me know by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to ask Roger Applegate to proceed to the podium.
Thank you. I do this every time. So I'm here, so the last meeting you all requested to have us address issues with the private land raccoon hunting season. So further changes that we're going to present to you for that season is to actually close the private land season. So that's the July 1 to mid-September raccoon season in eastern counties of the state. So what we've done is we've defined a line which includes the entirety of a series of eastern counties. This is very similar to an eastern zone that existed back at least until sometime in the 90s. So we're just bringing back that particular zone. So the season will remain the same in all of the rest of the state except for that section that's east of that red line. So all those counties east of that red line. And that's what we've offered for you. So any questions?
All right. Do I have a motion for approval of Proclamation 18-03? Have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Any comment from the public? Okay. All in favor of Proclamation 18-03, let me know by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you. I'd like to call up James Kelly, who's the Deer Management Program Coordinator, to the podium.
Thank you, Roger. As Roger mentioned, I'm James Kelly. I'm the Deer Management Program Leader. I'm going to share about the agency recommendation to change the definition of an antlered deer to a male or female deer with antlers that are a minimum of 3 inches in length. Hereafter, I'll refer to this as the 3-inch rule.
Hold on just a minute. I'm a little confused about the order on the agenda. I'd rather stay with the order the way ours is if we can and do WMAs.
I could accommodate that. Sorry for the oversight.
Okay.
May need.
I just think it would be much less confusing if we. If that was supposed to be on here, it's not at this point.
So the way that we'll work through this is we'll work from west to east with Region 1 WMAs 2, 3, then 4. And per the chairman's instructions, as each Regional Wildlife Program Manager ends his section, he will just go ahead and transition to the next speaker and withhold questions until the last program manager has spoken. Is that correct?
That's correct. We'll get
Okay.
a motion in a second, then we'll open it up for questions or discussion.
Very well. So first I'll call on the Regional Program Manager from Region 1, Jim Hamilton.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Like we went over last month, help me out here, Chuck.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Just before we get started, I know that we have spent a lot of good time on this last month, but we're all fresh today, and members of the public are here and weren't here last month. And so if you wouldn't mind, it would be great for all of the presentations to be as full as possible in terms of the implications of the decisions that are getting made. There are folks that want to testify, and it may not be as clear to them when that moment comes. And so it would be incredibly helpful if you could just make sure that we don't assume that someone has information. And I've slept since last month, so I would probably appreciate the refresher as well, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodson.
Okay, the first, we've got recommendations for Presence Island and Horns Bluff Refuge and Presence Island WMA. The first one we've got changed. We're also changing Moss Island, John Tully, and Ernest Rice, and we're adding an either-or option. All these WMAs have to be a 9-point, and we're going to add we're recommending adding an option of or 20 inches outside beam diameter or outside beam spread. So as you see at the bottom, it says antlered deer must either be 9 antler points or an outside spread of 20 inches. And on Presence Island, we're removing the both hunts, the 3-day antlerless quota hunt and the 3-day antlerless quota hunt. And we're going to have 2 3-day antlered quota hunts. We're recommending 2 3-day antlered hunts of 30 hunters per hunt. And we're going to, the bag limit will be 1 antlered deer. And this is to provide more opportunity for 10 more hunters to have a buck hunt. Most people want to go there for a big buck. And on Horns Bluff Refuge, we're adding the goose seasons after the youth waterfowl season. We're recommending adding the goose seasons to coincide with a light goose season for more hunter opportunity. And on Cypress Pond Refuge, we had a request to open small game seasons after the youth waterfowl hunt in February, and that's what we're recommending, and it's to increase hunter opportunity for small game. At this point, I'd like to introduce Region 2 Program Manager Richard Kirk.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Commissioner, my name is Richard Kirk, the Region 2 Wildlife Program Manager. Today, I'm going to present proposed regulation changes for 2 WMAs in Region 2, Cheatham WMA and Cedar Hill Swamp. Cheatham WMA is 21,000 acres just west of Nashville. In the late 90s, early 2000s, Cheatham was the premier WMA to go to. In 2007, an EHD outbreak basically devastated the herd. Because of that, we feel like hunters have left Cheatham WMA. The deer have come back. We know the deer have come back. We've had thermal imaging surveys where we estimate the deer population on Cheatham to be about 2,000, but the people haven't come back. The hunters haven't come back. Last fall, we ran vehicle surveys where Eric and the guys ran the area looking for vehicles and counting vehicles of who was using the area, primarily on Saturday and Sunday, 11 different occasions, and the average was 16 vehicles using that 21,000 acres. So what we're proposing to bring hunters back to Cheatham, a series of regulations, the first being earlier hunts. This archery hunt would open a week earlier. It's non-quota either sex. Young sportsman's hunt is earlier than the statewide young sportsman's hunt, and it's non-quota and it's 3 days instead of 2. 2 muzzleloader hunts earlier than the statewide opening, and one of those either sex. 3 gun hunts, and one of those either sex, but one of them is a little unique. It's a Monday through Friday hunt for hunters that work weekends, and so this provides them that opportunity. The remaining WMA is Cedar Hill Swamp in Robertson County. Right now, the regulation says archery only for big game. We need it to allow hunters to use shotguns during turkey season to open that up. And with that, I'll invite Kirk Miles from Region 3.
Thank you, Richard. I will warn you, if you don't know anything about Uchi, you're fixing to.
Uchi. Thank you, afternoon commissioners. I'm here to present TWRA recommendations for 7 wildlife management areas in Region 3. We'll begin with Catoosa Wildlife Management Area. The management goal for the deer herd on Catoosa is to promote the growth of the herd. To accomplish this, we're recommending to limit the harvest of does during our archery deer hunt. Historically, the 9-day archery hunt accounts for about 85% of our total antlerless harvest during our entire deer season. So this proposal does 2 things. It simplifies the hunt by combining 3 3-day hunts into 1 9-day hunt, and it reduces the bag limit. Basically, the prior bag limit would allow the take of 3 antlerless deer. The new bag limit would allow a maximum of 2 antlerless deer. The Crooked Fork unit is a new addition, a 1,200-acre addition to Catoosa. It's located in Morgan County. We're ready to open this area for hunting with an 18 season. Small game and trapping will be same as statewide, with the exception of closed to quail hunting. You'll notice that we're closing the big game season, basically deer season, on December 7th. This is to allow small game hunters good access to some really good small game habitat, a large chunk of the area that we're managing for small game. And the hunting equipment restrictions are to address safety concerns with residential developments that basically surround the area. On South Cherokee WMA, we're recommending that all deer hunts and all deer harvested on deer hunts will count toward the statewide bag limit. This proposal is to alleviate the problem of county harvested deer being incorrectly checked in as WMA harvested deer. 2 of the South Cherokee deer hunts, our archery and muzzleloader hunt, open prior to the statewide deer seasons, and that exacerbates the problem of deer being incorrectly checked in. On 2 units of the Tellico Lake WMA, we're recommending the addition of 2 young sportsman turkey hunts, an additional day of young sportsman deer hunting, and 8 additional days of rabbit and squirrel season to create additional opportunity for hunting on that area. Pea Ridge WMA, this is a unique recommendation. Wally Akins, our small game habitat biologist, has worked for several years establishing some great early successional small game habitat on this area, and we now feel that it supports a quail population that can tolerate some limited harvest. This proposal would close the Unit B big game season for 1 week. During that week, we would replace the big game hunt, deer hunting, with an early season young sportsman's quail hunt with a very limited bag of 2 birds per youth hunter per day. At Grabbin State Park, this deer hunt is typically available every other year at the request of the park staff. Consulting with park staff for this year, they will not be requesting this hunt for the 2018 or the next 2019-20 hunting season. On Enterprise South Nature Park, this year we're going to be able to hunt both units of the area. So with that expansion in the hunting area, we're also going to increase our hunter quota from 15 to 25 to get the most hunters we can out on that property. Then we come to Uchee, good old Uchee. The management goal on Uchee, the deer herd for Uchee, is actually to decrease that herd. Uchee is primarily a waterfowl refuge, and we're experiencing severe depredation of our crops that we plant for waterfowl on the refuge part. So we're trying to promote or increase the take of deer on the area. Starting with the archery hunt, we're proposing to replace 1 archery hunt with 2 firearm hunts. We'll move the remaining archery hunt to a later in the archery season, and we're increasing the bag limit on all the deer hunts that we have on the area. Again, that proposal is consistent with the management goal of reducing the deer herd on Uchee. Again, on Uchee, We would like to recommend removing antler restrictions on the 2 young sportsman's deer hunt, simply to increase the opportunity for the youth hunters to harvest a deer. On the rabbit season, we're recommending to set the rabbit season the same as statewide season date. Currently, a rabbit season opens about a week prior to the statewide season. Hunters have recognized that. It's one of the few areas they can hunt, and in a nutshell, they're hunting. The pressure is taking most of the rabbits out within that 1 week period prior to the statewide season. So we're recommending setting the season same as the statewide season dates to decrease the pressure on our rabbit populations, and also to avoid conflict with 6 of our deer quota hunts that were overlapping with the current season that we had. On our raccoon and possum seasons, we recommend opening the raccoon season on the last Tuesday in October and run it through the remainder of small game season, which would be February 28th, and increasing the bag limit on raccoons. This proposal will actually provide an additional 79 days of raccoon hunting, and it will allow or avoid conflict with 4 of our deer quota hunts. On our dove hunting on Uchee, we're recommending opening dove season with the first segment of the statewide dove season. In the past, we opened with a youth hunt on the 2nd day of dove season. Participation was dismal on that hunt. We had an average of 5 hunters participating. That's over the past 5 years. They harvested an average of 2 birds per hunter. So we just want to open it up with statewide seasons. We're also moving this dove field to a new location to try to make it better for everybody. Again on Uchee, we are recommending establishing a permanent wheelchair-bound hunting zone, and within this zone establishing a 3 hunter quota during any of our deer quota hunts and a 2 hunter quota during any of our turkey hunts. Obviously, this will increase the opportunity for wheelchair-bound hunters to use the area. We're going from 1 3-day hunt, I think, for wheelchair-bound hunters and 1 wheelchair-bound hunt for turkey hunters. So with this, they'll be able to hunt any hunt. And we'll administrate or run this system through the regional office, very similar to how we do our wheelchair-bound duck blind on the Varner tract. For turkey season, we're recommending eliminating 1 turkey hunt. That will allow us to add breaks in between the hunts that we have remaining. It'll also allow us to reschedule 2 hunts that we had on weekdays to weekend hunts, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday hunts. This is a response to hunter input that we were hunting turkeys every weekend we possibly could. And we also were, under this proposal, are going to be able to move our hunts to earlier in the season a little bit. So we're hoping that providing those breaks in between those weekend hunts will improve the quality of hunts for our hunters on the area. On our young sportsman's turkey hunt, it ran Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'd like to recommend cutting that down to Saturday and Sunday only, and increasing the hunter quota from 10 to 15. Again, we've had low participation on this hunt, and this proposal is designed to increase participation. And with that, I'd like to invite John Mike, the Region 4 Wildlife Program Manager, to the podium.
Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and I'm certainly thankful I don't have UCHI in Region 4. But I'm here to present recommendations on 4 WMAs in Region 4. Those WMAs are Chuck Swan, North Cumberland, Buffalo Springs, and Forks of the River. And with that, I'm going to start with Chuck Swan. At Chuck Swan, we want to shift the dates of the muzzleloader deer quota hunt to the Friday and Saturday after opening of the statewide muzzleloader season. One thing to keep in mind with these hunts, currently the muzzleloader and 2 gun hunts at Chuck Swan occur in 3 consecutive weekends, which puts a tremendous amount of pressure on that deer herd in a short time period, which also affects the quality of the hunts. So what we're wanting to do is move that muzzleloader hunt away from the gun hunts. This will allow for more of a break in hunting between the muzzleloader and gun hunts. It'll lessen the hunting pressure and improve the quality of the gun hunts. Also at Chuck Swan, we want to change the bag limit of the archery quota hunt from 1 deer either sex to 1 antler deer. The deer population at Chuck Swan experienced a major EHD event. As a result, we recommend eliminating all antlerless harvest except for the young sportsman hunt. And as a side note on this, the Chuck Swan TWRA staff and the Tennessee Division staff there on the area got out and they put eyes on around 200 deer that they found dead on the area, and that's what they found. Our next recommendation is shift the dates of the Chuck Swan WMA Young Sportsman Deer Hunt to the Saturday and Sunday before the statewide Young Sportsman Deer Hunt. This will allow young sportsmen an additional opportunity to the statewide Young Sportsman Deer Hunt, and also this is something that a lot of the parents have asked us to look at. Even though this is a quota hunt, a lot of kids that get drawn, they're torn whether to hunt on private property or on the WMA. This will take care of that issue, and it'll also increase participation. At Chuck Swan, we'd like to standardize the dates of the big game quota hunts. We're wanting to use generic verbiage to describe when those hunts occur and when they're going to open. And in doing that, it will prevent the redundancy of setting specific hunt dates in the WMA proclamation each year, and the dates will be updated in the hunting guide. So using that generic language and looking at the calendar, this is what the hunt dates for Chuck Swan will be this upcoming year. Going from big game to small game at Chuck Swan, we want to shift the opening date of the 7-night raccoon hunt from the first 7 consecutive nights in November to the Sunday following the 2nd gun deer hunt. This will allow the hunt to take place after the deer quota hunts, and also this is something that the coon hunters have asked us to do, is to move this hunt later. The weather's cooler, and also one of the big complaints is that first week in November, a lot of the trees are still holding leaves. So when they have a good race and tree, that they're having trouble finding the raccoon up in the tree. So we feel like we can accommodate that by moving this hunt after the 2nd gun hunt. At Chuck Swan dog training season, we want to delete the verbiage pointing breed dogs prohibited. This is something that was put in there 16 years ago, and that statement is no longer needed. At North Cumberland, allow 2 antler deer during the muzzleloader and move antlerless days from December to opening week. And to understand part of this recommendation, at North Cumberland, the deer season is the same as the statewide dates, but to allow for deer herd growth, we set up a chart of when the hunter can kill an antler deer or antlerless deer. And the chart was somewhat confusing, and the hunters asked us to try to improve that chart. So to improve the chart and stay within all good biological parameters of managing that deer herd, we were able to come up with this, allowing 2 antler deer during muzzleloader and moving the antlerless days. And as mentioned, this will reduce the confusion, and the hunters asked us to do this. So the chart at North Cumberland, if you looked at the old chart, there's a lot of verbiage in there. This new chart reduces the verbiage. It's very easy to understand, and in simplifying this chart, there's no change in the archery season. During the muzzleloader, there's no increase in total deer that can be taken, and during the muzzleloader, those muzzleloader hunters can take their 2 antler deer now. Within the gun season, no change in total deer, and we're just moving the antlerless opportunity from mid-late December to the first 7 days of the gun season, and young sportsmen, no change. At Buffalo Springs, we're wanting to establish the dove hunting dates for the first few days of the season. We're recommending for 2018, September 1, 3, and 8, then open with statewide seasons thereafter. 2019, September 1, 2, and 7, then open with statewide seasons thereafter. And what this will do, allow breaks in hunting in the early part of the season, the first week. And what this will do, it'll encourage the doves to continue using the fields, feed in the fields, and rest, which will improve the quality of the hunts. And this is something that a lot of the dove hunters have asked us to do. This is the second most popular dove field in the region. At Forks River WMA, change wording regarding usage of trails. We're recommending to change the wording to perimeter trail open year-round. The perimeter trail is defined as the Will Skelton Greenway, Whaley Trail, and Western Perimeter Trails. All other trails open only to hunters from September 1 through May 31. This is simplifying when people can be on Forks River as far as hunters and non-traditional users, because one thing to keep in mind about Forks River, it's within sight of downtown Knoxville. It is a very utilized WMA by multiple people, and by simplifying this language and where we completed the Western Perimeter Trail, this is a way that we're hopefully going to take care of a lot of conflicts. And with that, I think we're through with the WMAs, and I would like for Chuck Yost to come to the podium.
So that concludes the recommendations for WMA, and I think probably, I'm sure there's questions, so I'll have to defer to the program managers depending on the WMA. So the program managers, if you don't mind, be ready to go ahead and go to the mic in the middle, and please answer any questions the commission has regarding WMAs. So I'll defer back to the chair.
All right, thanks, Chuck. I want to remind the public that when you comment or make comments, just direct your comments at me, and don't engage with agency personnel back and forth. At this time, I'm going to have a motion for passage of Proclamation 18-06. Yes. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I would ask members of the Wildlife Committee if you would wait and let me recognize you, so we don't have so much interaction going on in between. Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll defer to how you want to pace the discussion in terms of questions, because I've got 3 areas that I would suspect other folks are interested in. And I also think that there are some folks here that eventually will make their own comments from the public. But there are 3 issues that are concerning to me, both for the WMAs and for the larger season later. We've had tremendous conversation from the public recently about, and this is unfortunate timing because we just closed turkey season, and it's also the season setting process, so the timing is a little bit unfortunate because I don't think that those things are reflected in the traditional comments process. But in terms of the significant changes I've experienced personally and have heard from constituents in Middle Tennessee as well as East Tennessee, but also West Tennessee, about a real concerning decline over several years. That is anecdote, it is not research. I want to be really clear, so that's not something we should necessarily base our decisions on, but it is very serious. We have a significantly thoughtful and expensive UT study going on in certain areas, and so I'm really interested in, both for WMAs and the larger season, what if anything, the agency might want to share with us about the turkey population this season. I certainly would not want to miss an opportunity for us to be thoughtful about that. And I'll go ahead and give the other two, but I'm happy for you to box this in subject areas if you like, so we don't have to go back and forth. The second is significant concerns in East Tennessee about the reduction in deer population in certain counties. I'd love any agency fresh information about that, so that would be a Region 4, but 3 and 4 issue. And then I've got a few questions on the Cheatham County implications, but I think that will likely come up in discussion just for clarification for my understanding. So particularly about the turkey issue, if we could start there, I would love for you to help me understand more about the decline and what, if any, changes in the turkey bag limit or fall seasons or any of those kinds of things would impact the research study, or if it would. We've also got a recommendation from the National Wild Turkey Federation about a suite of recommendations for changes in the season, and those have not been seen by the public to my knowledge. I just received it last night at 10 o'clock at night, and so those are all things fresh on my mind, and I would love to understand from the agency how you are thinking about that and how you might advise us to think about that.
So a recommendation would be is address turkeys first, and for brevity's sake, we did not include a harvest summary in today's presentation. However, we had it in our hip pocket, so we're going to reference the harvest information that Ms. Sweeney presented last month, so she'll review that with you now. And we're going to have to kind of work back and forth between two presentations here. So if it's not exactly fluid, please pardon us for that. But now I'll defer to Ms. Sweeney to present again the results of last year's turkey season. I think that'll help us get into the conversation you're looking to have regarding turkeys.
Mr. Chairman, how do you want to handle amendments? I agree with Mr. Woodson. Do you want to try to handle this as we go, or wait till the very end to take amendments on either?
I'd take an amendment. I mean, I would like to have discussion, but about, if we can discuss it, and then, at the end, if you have amendments, that would be the best time. Okay. Right. And if you're on this committee and you have questions about this subject, it would be great to ask it while we're on this subject. And then when we move to something else, let's try to get it.
We've got a motion and a second on the floor, and we're going to turkey season highlights. Is that proper?
We are possibly changing limits on WMAs or anything, so yes, it would be proper.
Okay, thank you. I'm Joy Sweeney. I am the turkey program leader, and I'm just going to briefly run through a high-level rundown of the 2017 and 18 wild turkey season results. I know we just finished up a few days ago the 2018 spring turkey season, but that's not really a part of my presentation. Those data are fresh and haven't been filtered or thoroughly analyzed, plus there's still more coming in. There's paper tags that have to be entered, and so until all that is compiled, a thorough analysis of the 18 season isn't available. So I'll go over the 2017 spring season. And altogether, during 2017, 34,444 turkeys were taken. The vast majority of those are taken on private land, 31,400-ish, and that also includes some public lands that we don't keep special track of, like TVA lands, non-WMAs, but that's the vast majority of Tennessee. We have a 2-day young sportsman hunt in 2017. About 1,400 birds were taken during those 2 days. And then on our WMAs, where we do a lot of management and keep track of the harvest, a total of about 1,600 birds were taken. So overall, when you look at spring turkey over time, you can see in about 2000 you've got a leveling off of harvest, and this is an indicator to us that our turkey population has reached a carrying capacity and is stabilized out, and so your harvest stabilizes as well and bounces around. And so in 2017, that's what we're looking at, about a 1% increase over the year before. And we can zoom in on the past 15 years and take a closer look at that. And we see a slight downward trend, but when you analyze it and do a statistical study of it, it really shows that it's been stable over the past 15 years when you look at it on a statewide basis. But we have 4 administrative regions, and we typically break things down into that scale. Region 2, which is where we are in Middle Tennessee, typically harvests about 35% of the overall take in the state, and that's that top line in black. And then the other 3 regions, West Tennessee, Cumberland Plateau, and East Tennessee are down below. Put a trend line on these, and really Region 2 is the only area of Tennessee where we see a decline in harvest over time. We can take away those specific points and look at the trend lines alone. When you do a statistical analysis on the Cumberland Plateau, we've got actually growth of our harvest over time. That's statistically significant. Region 4 and Region 1 really show to be stable harvest over time. And Region 2 shows about an average of 7% annual decline in harvest over time. So I point out Region 2 because that's kind of a red flag, and that's kind of what is the foundation for our concern that has inspired us to run a research study in Region 2 to find out what are the variables affecting this harvest rate. And that research study is in conjunction with the National Wild Turkey Federation and with the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And it should be completed in 2020 and an analysis probably the next year. Spring turkey hunter harvest, there were approximately 21,000 successful hunters. Of these hunters, about 70% took 1 bird, about 20% took 2 birds, and then about 12% took 3 or more birds. I have another slide. Let me take a sip of water real quick. Okay.
Pardon us just a second here. Which one is it? The bonus?
No, it's the current one. No, no, well done. Go back. It's the pocket. It's the one above it.
Is it on this presentation?
That slide. So last month, the commissioners expressed that they were concerned about bonus opportunity on WMAs to take bonus birds, which is a bird that you can take that will allow you to exceed your statewide limit of 4 birds. And I did an analysis last month and came up with a total of 6 hunters that took 5 or more birds. Well, I looked into it further to further our discussions about it and kind of to do an average over 5 years and look at it over time, and I figured out that I'd made a mistake. In actuality, in 2017, a total of 29 hunters took 5 birds or more. Of those 29 hunters, 25 took 5 birds, 2 hunters took 6 birds, and 2 hunters took 8 birds, pardon me. If you add it all up, about 40 birds were harvested that were in actuality bonus birds, birds that were taken that were beyond the 4-bird bag limit. So I just wanted to make that clear and point out my mistake, because I know that's important to you in what you're considering at this time. So can I go back to the other one? And I'll run through, I think next is the fall harvest of 2017.
Chairman, may I ask a question before we leave this slide? Do you know how many of the 3 and 4 birds, or how many, any of the others are bonus birds, not just the ones over the statewide bag limit, but how many of the 3 birds and the 4 birds take was bonus?
What I can tell you is that I looked at all the areas that have hunts that have bonus bird opportunity. And I added up all the harvests taken on all these areas. TWRA has, there's 6 areas that are managed by TWRA, and there's 5 areas that are managed by our partners, such as LBL, Fall Creek Falls State Park. On our hunts, on the TWRA managed hunts, on an average year, 120 turkeys are taken during hunts that have bonus bird opportunity. And on our partner areas, 66 turkeys. And so altogether, on an average year, when you look at hunts that have bonus bird opportunity, a grand total of 186 birds are taken.
Thanks, Joy. Go ahead.
Would you like for me to continue and go over the fall, or you want to stick with spring?
Hold on just one second.
My apologies. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Do you have the 2018 data?
I have some numbers for you, yes.
Do you have it compared over time, included?
Well, what we can do is we can, I can tell you.
And Joy, thank you. I know you're having, it's not been terribly long since the season closed, so.
Sure. So I can tell you in 2018, that ended 3 days ago.
Right.
I wrote it down. Haha. Okay. So can we pull up that old last month's? I wish I knew how to do that.
And Joy, thank you. While y'all are doing that, so I can make sure that my colleagues get to jump in here. At some point, I would really appreciate you addressing the question of what potential impacts a reduction in bag opportunities could have on the research study. It's my understanding that it would not have one because particularly for the fall season, those communities are already closed anyway, but I would love for you to address that because I certainly don't want to negatively impact the study, but I'm very concerned about the experience that we're hearing. So just trying to understand and what the implications are. Thank you.
Sure. Research study. Okay, so in 2018, I tell you what, I'm kind of weighing this a little bit, but I haven't thought about it. If you look at this, on private lands, that 31,401 number for 2017. For 2018, the preliminary number is 25,600. And then if you add all that together and you get to that grand total there at the bottom, 34,444. The grand total for 2018 so far is 28,260. So it's considerably lower than last year. And you can kind of look at it on this chart right here and look at that 25,000 mark, that line there, and you see where this past spring's harvest would fall. So that gives you the ability to look at it over time. So when you do a little math, you see that we're down about 6,000 birds compared to last year. And that's about an 18% decrease from last year. And really last year was kind of on target with what our average has been over the past 5-10 years. So it really is an 18% decrease from our average over the past 5-10 years. Oh, okay. So going on to the study, the study is a 5-year field, has 5 years of field work in it. And the reason it's such a long study is because in science, the magic word is repetition, repetition, repetition. Because what you're trying to get at are the things that you try to hold everything steady, and you weed out anomalies that might affect your conclusions. So when we proposed the research study, we asked for a minimum of 2 years of holding regulation study, but that we prefer longer if possible. But we have reached that minimum already. We've had 2 years of field research. So the obligation has been met. But in science, repetition is the best. And the more baseline data we can get, the more confidence we'll have in the results. So it's ideal that we have more years of baseline study, but it's not detrimental if it gets changed this year.
Great, thank you. And I apologize, I'm trying to make sure I stay on track with this. Last question-ish.
Go for it.
You've referenced the estimated birds. How many unreported birds are you estimating in your calculations?
We have no estimate of unreported birds. That's one thing that in our harvest estimate, it is completely just mandatory harvest reports. The hunter effort and reporting rate or unreported birds is not factored in, and we have no method to actually arrive at a number we could be confident in.
Okay. Any other questions? Joy? All right. Commissioner Gardner?
So just to tag on to the turkey thing and the reference to the fall harvest, what are your thoughts statewide about the fall harvest of the hens in particular, and the impact on the poults and recruitment?
Sure. So fall harvest, let me see if I can get to my slides. About fall harvest. Okay. In 2017, a total of 703 birds were taken during the fall season. Now remember, in the spring, we were talking about 34,000 birds. So 700 compared to 34,000 birds isn't a whole lot. And that's kind of our thought on fall harvest is, yes, it has hen harvest, and hens are essential to a good reproductive output, of course. But when you run a population model, and the literature says that as long as your fall harvest is 10% or lower compared to your population, then you should not be impacting your population negatively. And 700 is 10% of 7,000. And we know we have way more than 7,000 birds, so we feel confident we're not approaching that cutoff mark that the literature speaks of. And of course, we're well below it, and so that's why there's no agency recommendation regarding fall season.
Thank you. I'll be the last one to argue with science and the statistics over time, but when you see a significant drop in a harvest from one year to the other, it would seem prudent to try to be a little proactive in a measure you can take, even if it's a small measure, to try to protect any possibility of having young. I'm not for doing away with fall season or even the hens for in particular, but you know, I just hate that we're not considering something. And I know your data is still preliminary, but I've gotten quite a few reports, and I know some people who've experienced it. I turkey hunt, and I got fortunate this year. I did pretty well, but not everybody was so fortunate. So, thank you.
Commissioner Box.
Thank you, Chairman. Joey, I know that most of Region 1 has a 1 bird limit, WMA. Will the agency be opposed to doing a 2 bird limit on the WMAs that are 4 bird limit?
You did bring this up last meeting, and we did talk about it as an agency, but we didn't come back with another recommendation, and that's mostly just because our WMAs are just so different from one another. that the regulations on each WMA are kind of tailor-made to that WMA. I mean, for instance, North Cumberland WMA is almost 200,000 acres large, and it's expansive and mountainous territory, and all around it are mountains, and so a 4-bird bag limit in that area that doesn't really get a whole lot of hunting pressure is preferred. But then, like in Region 1, where you mentioned, they've already dropped the bag limit down to 1. It's because of those areas are special in that they're kind of isolated islands of habitat in a sea of agriculture, and so turkeys tend to concentrate there, and so it's important, to be a little more conservative there, and so that's why they've already tailored their bag limits as such, and so that's why we didn't come back with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joy. I'm going to add one comment to that. And I understand, just like North Cumberland, 200,000 acres. Is that what you said? 200,000. Well, we've got 200-acre WMAs that have the same limit as the 200,000. I think that's the concern.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 4-bird limit on a 200-acre WMA is much different than a 200,000. So I think that is a concern. Any other questions on turkeys from the? We're going to wait. Of course, the only amendments we're going to take is in reference to WMAs, which I know everybody knows that right now. So
the reason we discuss turkeys now is just, excuse me, Chairman,
okay,
just because the part of the turkey bag limits and all was discussed in WMA. So that was just the reason to change order here. But I think it'd be best to discuss the WMAs and then come back to big game.
Do we have fall harvest on WMAs? Or hens?
On certain ones. Like, it's tailor-made per WMA.
Okay. Director Carter.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One, just a point to point out, Joy, you might mention that looks like a really drastic decrease, but there's also a decrease in birds available. You might point that out there as well before we get too far down in where we're going. The other part being on, in terms of a WMA limit, as Joy was pointing out, we do look at management areas differently on each individual one, and you're right on some of those that are very small, that probably needs to be addressed. But on the larger ones, the WMAs, we really try our best to have something available for those people who have no other place to hunt, and who we try to push people that way. So if we have an area that's open with statewide seasons, I'd be reluctant to move back from that limit on those, as long as it's a large enough size that it can accommodate it. But anyway, that's just another thought. But to this one, I thought for sure you might want to mention that change, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Carter.
Thank you, Director. I did pull up this slide and never really addressed it because we were talking about fall season, and I wanted to kind of represent what the harvest looks like during the fall. And in 2015, the commissioners dropped the bag limit for fall season. Bag limit is set on a county-by-county basis, so you can harvest back in 2015, before the bag limit was dropped. There were some counties where you could harvest 6 birds, some where you could harvest 3, and then during that season setting, the commissioners dropped the bag limit per county down to 1. And so that affected the season in 2016 and the season in 2017. And you can see in 2016, the harvest dropped by 40%, and in 2017 by 30%. And so I just wanted to point out that we have made, in the past, conservative measures to limit fall season that have been very effective.
All right.
Joy, thanks for bearing with me here. But so do you think that is the reflection of our turkey population and maybe the lower success rate this year still attributable to back when we could take 6 turkeys in the fall in any way, or do you think that's that's having an impact, and if so, what do you think it's been?
It's difficult to conjecture as to the why and what you can attribute our current harvest drop this past spring to. Although I can say that I wouldn't attribute it to past fall seasons being too liberal, at least. Because if you think about, let's say, if you look at this chart and the averages, we'll say 2,000 in a fall season, you're still looking at 2,000 being 20% of 20,000, 10% of 20,000. Is that good math? Okay. And we're still confident that we have more than 20,000 turkeys, considering in the fall we take 30,000 dead birds. We should have well over 20,000 live birds. And so we're looking at that 10% of the population mark, make sure that we don't exceed in the fall what we think could be 10% of the population. And I don't think we've done that in the past, so I don't think that fall harvest has really been a major contributor to what we've seen in the spring with harvest declining in some areas.
Sharon, I got a question. Do you have any models that show how many, over a period of 5 years, one hen and its offspring might result in what number of turkeys? With average success, average nest success, average whole recruitment, that turkey produces how many offspring in X number of years?
I'm sure there is such a model, but I'm not readily at this point familiar with it.
All right. I'm going to move on.
Okay.
So, because turkeys will come back up again, but back to the WMAs. Thank you, Joy. Also, thank you for, I know you've did a lot of work in a hurry trying to get some stuff together in 3 days, so thank you. Any other questions specific to the Proclamation 18-06? Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Chairman. Reference the, is this where we talk about the Cheatham, the whole collective, right? All right, so the Cheatham WMA in particular, we've got non-quota archery hunts, non-quota, but we're doing a quota hunt on muzzleloader and gun, is what the proposal is, correct? Yes. Okay, and that's limited to 400 per hunt. I've gotten contacted and spoke with a few individuals about that have always hunted Cheatham through the good and through the bad. And they raise a concern that if they don't get drawn, they lose their place to hunt. And it all being a quota hunt, you can only get drawn for 2 of the hunts, is that correct?
Yeah, if you get drawn through the drawing process and then if there's a vacancy, you can draw for 1 more. I mean, you can come by one. Where did Sonia go? You can get 2. I think so, yes.
Okay, so a maximum of 2 of the hunts. And for people that who've been hunting that for their whole, for the past several years, and you're wanting to attract people, you've already got some people. We just risk running some off as well. Don't you think, by doing just a quota?
Well, and we've talked about this.
Okay.
When we made it statewide, and this is and we don't have numbers per se on this, but anecdotally, over time, some use on some WMAs went down when you take away the quota hunt experience. Making it quota hunt makes it special. And we felt like with participation so low on Cheatham, that if we put it back into the quota hunt system, we would make it special again, and hunters would make that special effort to show up and hunt on Cheatham. Other incentives, and let me say this, and I don't remember mentioning this when I was up there, and I apologize if I didn't, but there's also, we wanted to implement antler restrictions of 4 on one side or a 15-inch spread, and that is also an incentive because there's some nice deer out there now, primarily because of the lack of hunter participation.
Commissioner Stroud?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I got the same thing, Dennis. I've been a chairman twice. I'm sorry, a commissioner twice. And I've had more phone calls on this situation than anything else since I've been serving. And I think, in my opinion is, I think this quota thing is dangerous. I just think there, you don't have a ton of public land in Tennessee compared to the Colorados and that kind of stuff, and a lot of people can't hunt these private lands. And the Cheatham areas and those kind of things, it's really important for a guy and his kid to be able to do that. And I mean, I'm telling you, a lot of phone calls, and the majority of the conversations was, I grew up hunting it, and I bring my kid and we hunt it. And this quota thing is spooky because I don't know if I can hunt there. So I say that to say, is there, to ask the question, is there a balance? Is there a such thing that, and pardon my ignorance, that you can have some quota hunt there, but also have a time that people can hunt and have the opportunity to go there like they are now? I just think we're overthinking. I think we're overthinking this participation thing, and I would hate for the people in our state to not be able to go hunt because of us trying to figure out how we get more hunters. I just think over time, if you have these people hunting, and like I say, if there's a such thing, Kurt, if there's, or whatever, that we could do a little bit of whatever that is quota-wise, and then open the dadgum thing up and let people hunt. I don't know what I'm saying other than I think that would be a cool thing for us to consider if there's a such thing and if there's a way. And it just might, satisfy everybody by looking at it that way instead of going drastically one way or drastically the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroud.
Quick comment.
Yes.
And we talked during our process how drastic this was, and I mentioned it last month. This is a trial and error kind of thing. I'll commit to coming back here next spring and updating you on what this fall season provided. In 2 years, if this is not working, if we need to fine tune it, if we need to do whatever, we're committed to. We want hunters back at Cheatham. That's our objective. And if in 2 years, if we have enough information to make that call, or we don't, we tweak, whatever. I mean, that's our objective.
Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Stroud, I didn't want to jump ahead of you if you were still asking questions on the same topic.
I heard what you said, and I get it. But you didn't answer my question. Is there a balance?
Well, this is what we carried through our process. I'm not really prepared today to understand.
Mr. Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. One, I really appreciate the incredible work that's happening at Cheatham. I mean, from the manager all the way through the agency, there is an obvious and very thoughtful focus to figure out not only how that property can be a gem, but how all WMAs can. So I want to be very clear about how I feel about that and want to be an encourager of that. The comments from my colleagues on this balance are also resonating with me as I've talked to constituents who have had traditions, and with a goal of increasing usage and having folks who, particularly opening weekend, it is quite a family event. And so I'm not going to put you on the spot for an answer on a what if this, but the desire for balance actually really, that resonates with me. And so here's what I wonder. I wonder what it would look like, because we're doing early access on archery, youth, muzzleloader, gun. I mean, there's all this, that's a tremendous amount of multiple policies that are encouraging new things. It's the traditional moments where folks are coming in early. on certain weekends that I just wonder about on the quotas, if there's a way to have the quota system be shared, be in a different time. I don't know, but those opening weekends and specific weekends, those are traditions that have been shared in that community for a really long time. And so hearing completely that this is an experiment, I'm just wondering if there is another way to balance the two and get everything we can get done to encourage more participation without unintentionally damaging the goodwill that we have and the user groups that we have. I know these are the same things you all have been balancing, but I'm struggling with that too, to be candid.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Commissioner Woodson, and because it feels like this is sort of an experiment, and we're wanting to incentivize folks to come to Cheatham, but it feels as though maybe we're going a little too far, so if we could split the difference, and it's certainly an incentive to come for the 2 weeks early. As Commissioner Woodson said, that's something that should draw folks to the WMA, and the antler restrictions is something that should. So you have two significant new additions, and then if it could then be open for the regular season as well, and possibly some of those folks who come early might come back again. And if that doesn't work, then maybe we move on to what we're proposing today, but not do all of that just yet. So basically saying the same thing Commissioner Woodson said.
Gardner.
Thank you, Chairman. One last thing, and this is not a, have y'all done anything besides this to try to attract more hunters there? Is this the first move?
Well, we actually, and this is wasn't a big effort, but last summer, Eric has game cameras out, and we posted on Facebook, Twitter, and whatever they are, big buck photos, and you know, come to Cheatham, look what's out there, and we got a huge number of hits online. I mean, I was really pleased, but it didn't translate into people on the ground.
Did y'all happen to post any post-harvest pictures of successful hunts?
I'm not sure if I'd have to ask Eric.
That was kind of where I was headed, because quota to me is the old school way of getting more people involved. You know, now in this day and age, social media is the way to communicate and to get the word out. And I think we're falling short if we don't try to do that. I'm glad to hear that y'all posted those pictures. I did not see them myself, but I'm glad to hear you're using it.
I probably had the same conversations that several of you guys did with those people up there. You know, I got one guy tell me there was 10 in his group that had been coming camping for the whole time, and it is a family tradition. And one of the biggest things he said about the area was he sent me a bunch of pictures, and there's definitely quality deer there. But one thing he said, that the road system had been, a lot of the roads had been shut down, and he was having to hike in 3/4 of a mile. He said he'd been hunting in the same tree for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. It was a really long time. And he said that one reason we weren't getting the hunter participation was that a lot of the roads that would give access into some of these places to hunt were shut off during the seasons. Was one thing he said. So I spent 30 minutes on the phone with the guy talking to him, and I don't know, it sounds like some of you other guys, ladies, had talked to him too. So maybe, I think if you do the antler restriction, you're going to create a market in and of itself by doing that I think will help your participation.
If I can, on the roads, Cheatham basically runs north-south, and Headquarters Road basically down the middle, with spur roads on each side. The long spur roads we close halfway, the short spur roads we close at the main road. And that rationale is strictly based on hunter complaints of being in the woods hunting and vehicles running down the road. And that is in response to that.
All right.
One last question. I actually had a question earlier from one of our colleagues. in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of very successful hunting going on. Was there a quota system during that window of time?
There was, yes, early on. It was the late 90s that Cheatham came out of the quota system. I can't tell you off the top of my head the exact year. There was also from 2002 through 2003 on Cheatham, and this gets confusing, like gun season on Cheatham was buck only. However, because there were special doe permits available in Cheatham County and Cheatham was open to the same as statewide, then you could use those permits on Cheatham. So that was another quota kind of that affected Cheatham.
Okay, and I very rarely like to legislate on the fly. It's against everything that I'm about. So I do have a question though. Is the quota opportunity possible for the early openers and then move into the traditional open season? I think I was hearing that from Chairman Cook, that perhaps a balance would be to open early, have a quota, have it. That's a very special time. It's a very unique thing, and it could be a new opportunity for folks to participate, but then to have the traditional open season and see how that would go as a start. I just wonder what the implications of that would be.
I would have to look at our dates and compare. If we have a gun hunt in the middle of muzzleloading hunt, you know, then I can't off the top of my head right here separate all that, but we can certainly look.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or an amendment on Cheatham? Okay. Thanks, Richard.
Can I be clear on what I need to do? Is there a task for me to go back and do something like this?
Okay.
I was just saying, so I'll be clear, it's not my place to give you a task.
Well,
but thank you for asking. I don't represent I represent one person on a committee. I would love to understand the implications for a balanced approach to accomplish the incredible goals of bringing more folks there, but also trying to do that. I think that's what I heard from several colleagues on the committee, and I would be very interested in what the implications of that would be, particularly if it were allowing the early access, allowing all of these other opportunities that are strategies, but perhaps slow walking the quota during regular season. I just wonder what that implication would be. I think it gives us 90% of the way there, and then we have an opportunity to understand what the impact of it was. So that's my wondering, and I would love to know, but don't think of it as like a task.
Well, I understand. I just want to meet expectations.
Yes, sir.
For everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Richard, if you will check into that.
Okay.
And then you can.
Russ is here. While this is all going on, we're going to go back and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Any other WMA questions? I will take amendments. Absolutely. Not yet. I am taking amendments.
Last month, I brought up Wolf River WMA to.
Your microphone on, Bill. I think they got you on hold.
It's not even playing music. All right, you got me turned on, Don. There you go. I brought up Wolf River WMA, and I watched the presentation from the regions, nearly every one of them were talking about increased opportunity. Wolf River WMA has been an archery only with muzzleloading for, I don't know, 15 or 18 years, probably, maybe 20, and I would like to see it more opportunity for rifle hunters. And I've been through the reasons. There were a couple of things that the agency said were concerned, concerns. One was safety. You know, there's always a minuscule chance that someone could be injured, but there's no data, no study, no empirical evidence that would cause any unnecessary concern over our hunters. Our hunters don't ride around like a truck full of rednecks and shooting up in the air, and some of the connotations that sometimes they are accused of. It's one of the safest groups, if not the safest group of people out there. The proximity to LaGrange, Tennessee, the WMA is predominantly, except for just a few acres south of the river and away from the town. It's odd that there would be a concern for safety, because about 4 years ago, the city of Piperton, which borders Unit 2 in Fayette County, which is open to rifle season, the city of Piperton, which is 10 times bigger or more than LaGrange, the mayor wanted to close hunting in proximity of his city limits, and the agency rightly defended hunters and opposed that closing. It didn't close. The concern went away, and nobody's been hurt. So I think it is somewhat disingenuous to say there's a safety issue. The second one was small game hunting. Small game season right now closes on January 31st. Statewide, it's open till February the 28th. The January 31st closing was established, if my memory serves me, several years ago when there was quail hunting. We cut the limit and we cut the season back to January 31st. Quail hunting is now closed on the area because it's a focus area. I'm hoping that quail hunting will be opened in a year or two on that. But the small game rabbit hunters could use, if that was extended to same statewide season, to be open to February the 28th, which would give the rabbit hunters themselves, 6 or 7 of them that I know hunt there, that have been hunting for 20 years that I've been hunting over in the area, 2 months basically alone to hunt the WMA. Plus it would open November the 5th instead of November the 19th as it does now. There are concerns from private landowners. I get that. There are several of them that border the WMA. Some of them used to be my friends, and they'll probably never speak to me again, but I get it that people on private property are concerned about the public using land next to them. I'm not deaf to that, but as a commissioner, it would be easy not to say anything, but part of our job is to provide opportunity and access and to the public. As some of these people out here probably are concerned at Cheatham, this is all the place they've got to hunt. So I think that WMA is underutilized. In my opinion, there's no safety issue. The small game hunters will have 2 months to the rabbit hunters would have 2 months to hunt it alone. So my amendment to the proclamation is that Wolf River WMA be open to statewide seasons with the exception of quail hunting, which would remain closed. That would allow rifle hunters to hunt, and it would also allow the rabbit hunters to hunt till February the 28th. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions or answer any questions that anybody might have concerns.
All right, I've got an amendment on the to the motion to. Do I hear a second? I've got a motion and a second to make Wolf River open to all statewide seasons, excluding quail. Any discussion or questions?
My question is just the reaction from the agency on this recommendation. I'm unfamiliar with it, so would love the agency position.
I'm going to ask Jim Hamilton to come up.
Good afternoon again. Wolf River WMA is Commissioner Cox realizes is it was formed in 1995, I guess. The original purchase was 4,000 acres from the Beasley farm. And historically, we had 2 quota deer hunts. The first one was muzzleloader in October, 50 quota, and then second was in November, a 2-day hunt, 50 quota with a gun. It's mainly managed for small game hunting. It's all fields, it's grown-up fields, it's small game hunting. This is where a lot of the rabbit hunters go. And originally we did have quail hunting out there, and we closed it down because because it is a focal area and the quail population was declining. There now, Wolf River WMA is Unit 1 and Unit 2. And Unit 1, which is what Commissioner Cox is referring to, is 6,300 acres, and it's south of LaGrange. The rest of it is there's another 4,000, 4,500, 4,600 acres along the Wolf River that is open statewide seasons and bag limits. What Commissioner Cox is referring to is opening Wolf River Unit 1 open with statewide season bag limits. The reason we don't have any small game hunting out there in February and why rabbit season closes on January 31st is because of the management practice of burning. That's when the manager burns most of the fields. He burns 300 acres at a time. We don't want to have people out there hunting when we're actively burning. And that's why it's closed at that time. I think that, as most of y'all know, I would assume rabbit hunters and deer hunters usually don't want to hunt together. And there's a lot of rabbit hunters out there, and they hunt quite a bit. And the reason we open up rabbit season on the fourth Saturday in November is because we don't want the rabbit hunters out there with the muzzleloader hunters out there to potential conflicts. And that's be the same thing with deer. So everybody's happy with it the way it is out there. We haven't had any, other than Commissioner Cox's recommendation, we haven't had anybody from the public requesting this. They're all happy with the way it's going. We've had no complaints over the last 5-6 years on anything we're doing out there. So our recommendation is the same unless y'all change it. Any questions?
Any other questions? Yeah.
One more point that he brought up, the 4,000 acres in Unit 2, and you may know this specifically, but a good part of Unit 2 is only available for access by boat. So there's not 4,000 acres that are readily accessible to everybody to hunt. And Wolf River Unit 1 is not, there are a lot of fields, but a lot of fields and woods offer a lot of deer hunting. So in the burning, I would suggest that a rabbit hunter is not going to put his dogs down where they're burning. So I don't think that's even an issue. So
as far as access, we have acquired last year. We acquired a lot of land along Johnson Road, and there's a road that is a good access road to a lot of that land by Rossville. So that's a new tract we've just purchased. So there is both. It is both accessible by water and by road. A lot of it is.
Thank you, Jim. I would say I visited Wolf River, and it is a very unique place. One of the best managed areas I've seen, and by only 2 people. Those guys deserve a lot of credit for what they're doing down there. They do a lot of burning. That's one part of this that I'm a little concerned about. I can see getting there. The window of opportunity for burning fields is very small. You might only have one day out of a 10. This year was horrible. You may only have one day out of 2 weeks that is suitable to burn, especially a year like this year. And my only concern would be is you get there and the rabbit dog, they're already turned loose, you're not going to be able to burn that field, and you're going to lose that opportunity. So I would just ask that we consider that strongly.
If that's a concern, I'm fine leaving it January 31st. I don't think there's that much conflict, but since it is a quail area, I'm fine with that. I think it's open November the 19th. So November the 5th to January 31st is still a good deal of time. And rabbit hunters and deer hunters do coexist. I've hunted the area a lot. I think there's same guys rabbit hunt. You know, they most of them hunt during the week, and when the deer hunters are not there. But I just don't think those conflicts are, and we certainly don't have hunters shooting people sporting dogs, and that's just not. There's no data on that. So I'm happy to amend my motion to close small game or small rabbit January 31st if that would help your concern.
Okay, just restate it that way. That'll be fine.
I move.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Wolf River WMA be open statewide seasons with the exception of quail, and the small game seasons remain closed on January 31st.
Commissioner Gordon. Okay, second. Any other questions on the amendment? If not, all those in favor? Wait just a minute. I've got to ask for public comment. Sorry. Any comment from the public on this amendment? Got one. If you would, please state your name and
this is regard to WMAs. Appreciate the opportunity, Commissioner Holbert. My name is Justin Lawson.
It is in reference to Wolf River?
No, WMAs in general.
Okay, if you would
just wait on that.
Yes,
okay, sure. Sorry about
that's
that.
That's okay. I got to keep it all in reference to Wolf River right now. Okay. Any public comments on Wolf River? All right. All in favor of the amendment that Wolf River be open with statewide seasons, excluding quail up until January 31st, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay. Motion carried. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other amendments? Any other questions or amendments for WMAs?
Are you wanting a motion on the WMA proclamation?
I've got a motion, just.
Sorry, are you asking for
any other amendments?
I would like to make a motion to, this is really challenging for me on the turkey population. I understand that this, today and other information, that this will not negatively impact the study, but I do think that beardless birds, my goal is protecting hens, but I think how we talk about it is the beardless birds. For fall turkey season, I would like to make a motion to eliminate the taking of, I guess, beardless birds in the fall season. I will tell you, I've got pulled up 6 or 7 or 8 very deep and significant recommendations from the Wild Turkey Federation, have received them from others. I think they're very important, and I'm open to all of them. I think given the timing of this season setting, I'm uncomfortable going farther than that for now, but this does seem to me to be, as we get more research, more information, even between now and 2 years from now. I think this is a serious enough issue that I'm deeply concerned about the population, but we need more science to help inform our decisions, and so I'd like to make that motion if it's appropriate at this time.
On WMAs?
Yes, sir. And just as a heads up, I'll be making the same motion unless someone else does for the full season.
Okay. All right. I have a second to that amendment. A motion and a second to amend the motion to not allow unbearded birds to be killed. That'll work. Any discussion from members of the commission? Any comment from the public?
If we could phrase that to where it says suspend the taking of beardless, it sounds temporary there. And I would like it to be temporary should the turkey population justify the hunt later.
I would consider that a friendly change and support.
Right.
And I would also
Okay.
ask legal, whatever the appropriate, consistent language is that we would use for
Yeah.
the goal
All right.
is what I would prefer.
Okay, that's appropriate. All right, any more discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment to suspend the fall season that allows the killing of unbearded birds, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Whew. Any other amendments or questions for anyone? Mr. Box?
Question. Are there any concern with the deer population at Foothills, WMA? Have we had anything?
I'm going to defer to Region 4, John Mike, to
Okay.
respond for the agency.
I also know Commissioner Woodson touched on this. I think this is one of those areas that she's been getting some calls about that. I think it's in that area, just to let you know.
Okay. With at Foothills, the area manager was concerned. We looked at the data, and it was mentioned there was a EHD die-off. I checked for Blount County. There was 54 deer total that were reported for Blount County, which is where Foothills is located. And looking at his harvest data for that WMA for the last 5 years, last year with an EHD die-off in the county, it was the highest deer harvest in 5 years. So with that information, we didn't feel like it was appropriate to recommend a reduction of opportunity to the hunters. We're going to monitor that WMA for the next 2 years to see what the harvest is going to be. Excuse me, I'm drying up because of sinuses. But we're going to monitor that deer herd. Now, a good comparison is Foothills and Chuck Swan. At Chuck Swan, the area manager was able to put eyes on 200 deer. At Foothills, we know we lost some deer, but we don't know how many. So, and then looking at the harvest data, and that's the only thing we have, only other data we have to look at, the deer harvest went up. So we felt uncomfortable, or I did, felt uncomfortable to recommend reducing any opportunity. So, but we are monitoring it. That's Blount County and Foothills is in Unit D, which is the most restricted as far as the ability to harvest antlerless deer of any of the units in the state. So we're hoping that there's not going to be a drop in the harvest, but we're going to monitor it.
How big is Foothills?
11,000 acres.
And how many did they kill last year antlerless?
14. It's, well, I start to say the year before they killed 7, and 5 years ago they killed 3. So it doesn't have a lot of harvest. It's a very mountainous WMA, and it's called Foothills because it is the foothills to the Smokies. And the area manager has done a tremendous job on habitat work, and I think that attributes to the increase in the harvest. So, like I said, that's one reason we'd like to monitor it for another year or two to find out. Now, if it shows a drastic decrease next year, even though that's next year's an off year, I may be back to look at that.
Okay. Thank you. I've had lots of phone calls, and they've asked to
Oh yeah, I mean,
decrease it antlerless or completely take it out. So
yeah, and like I said, it's very limited right now. Last year, out of the 14 deer, as far as antlerless deer that were harvested, there's only 4. So if you dropped antlerless opportunity, if you're just comparing it to this past year's harvest data, you'd only be affecting 4 people. So, or 4 deer. So it's one of those where I was uncomfortable, and we'd really like to monitor it a little closer before we make a hard recommendation on that WMA.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion or amendments? I will ask for public comment. I won't forget you. Anything else from committee members? All right. Any comment from the public? I'm going to let you go first since you've already been up here once. If you will, when you come up, state your name and your comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Holbert. My name is Justin Lawson. Live in Shelby County, Tennessee, West Tennessee, also with QDMA. And our concern is the bonus bucks for WMAs, basically making it where there's not a quality hunt for other individuals, and kind of gives an unfair advantage and puts increased pressure on the deer herd. So that was my comment.
Okay. Thank you, Justin.
All right, thank you.
Chuck, would you mind giving us agency's opinion on bonus bucks?
I could share that as a blanket policy, we haven't chosen to bring a recommendation to change any of the WMAs in regards to bonus bucks.
Okay. Any more comments from the public? Got one right over there. Come on up.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you all for your service. My name is Billy Mincer, Blount County, retired career wildlife biologist and manager, and faculty member from UT for 40 years. And I live about a mile from Foothills Wildlife Management Area, and I must disclose that there are a whole slew of wildlife agency employees in here that are my friends, professional colleagues, and former students. I think one thing that bothers me is that we use a one-size-fits-all for a lot of the WMAs. I'm not particularly focusing on foothills. I notice in more than one region that often you see when you come to big game, whether it's deer or turkeys, that you say statewide regulations apply here, and there's no specific differentiation between statewide and WMAs. And we know that on some WMAs, and particularly in Chilhowie Range where Foothills WMA is, it's inherently low carrying capacity for wildlife, deer and other things. And so it doesn't make sense to me that where the population is already low, you allow for or provide for statewide regulations that enables one person to take 7 or 8 does. How long did it take us to restore the deer population in Tennessee? About 30 years. How long for turkeys? About 50 years. So where there are not very many deer to start with, and on my farm right nearby, we've got 135 acres, I've seen less than 10 deer in 40 years. There's just not many deer there, and I have a food plot program, and there's no poaching, and I don't hunt on my property. I drive all the way to Humphreys County. So I think it does not make sense to leave the season open for does with 7 or 8 deer per person. That doesn't make sense. That's a reproductive part of the population. We need to protect that and grow that population to increase opportunities for all hunters that use it. And there's not that many, but it's important in East Tennessee. So, and again, my great respect for the Region 4 staff. They're great people.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And I've heard nothing but great respect for you as well. So, and I know there's one person, there's no way you had Director Carter in school. So.
He was not my student, he was my classmate.
Thought you were going to say you had him for a teacher. I didn't. Oh, the light switch got hit. I'm going to call on Assistant Director Bobby Wilson. Bobby, would you like to answer or comment on Mr. Minger's comments there?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Billy Minzer's well respected and well thought of in our agency folks. So I just want to comment that I don't know if anybody said it or not, because the agency staff, the wildlife staff, thought real long and hard about the AHD, about the effects it may have on the deer, and spent hours discussing it. They really didn't have a lot of hard evidence, hard documentation. They have some reported calls about PhD killed deer in various counties. Excuse me, but you know, in 2007 there was an EHD outbreak across the state, and when that happened, it was much bigger than what happened the last time in East Tennessee. And we didn't do, we just basically left it like it was, and the deer herd did come back like we thought they would. It just took a couple of years to do that. So that, I think that was the main reason the Wildlife Division staff decided not to make any changes at this point.
Thank you, Bobby. More public comments.
Hi, my name is Roger Dixon. I think I've talked to every one of you guys except for her. So, I was the one that called him and said that we've been hunting there for 18 years at Cheatham. And we've lifelong friends, family, and the hunting is getting better. The people aren't there, but the size of the deer are. And they didn't tell you guys that the reason the hunters are gone is because you can't shoot doe. It's a buck only. So when they found out that, they decided, well, just go somewhere else and hunt. And the numbers started coming up a little bit, and then he shut the roads off. And people were just going to walk. I have a father that's 70 years old. He can't walk 3/4 of a mile. So we want to keep it the same, or allow does to be killed. If you allow the does, the hunters will come. There's a guy who killed a 22-inch buck there this past year, and we don't believe that bringing more hunters in is going to make it any different. And are they going to make this a bonus buck? Because if they don't make it a bonus buck, nobody's going to come off their private land to shoot a buck that they could shoot on their own land. They're just not going to do it. So let's just say that there's 2,000 deer there. There's 2,000 quotas that are being put out. The number would be astronomical that everybody killed a deer. That means there'd be zero population. But you know it's not going to happen. And then you have the dates that he proposes. The best time to hunt is in November. That's when the rut goes on. There's 2 days you can hunt in November, and that's it. There's 37 days total.
1 minute.
There's 37 days total that he's proposing to hunt, whereas if you leave it statewide, there's over 100. I'm not guaranteed, or my family's not guaranteed we're going to get drawn. But if you keep it at statewide, I'm guaranteed I get to hunt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, to the commissioners. So my name is Ron Sparkman. I am Roger's cousin. I live in Pegram, Tennessee, and actually my property backs up to the Cheatham Wildlife Management Area. And so when I watched the presentation from the April meeting by Mr. Kirk, I was very disappointed that he did not share all of pertinent information with you guys, and my cousin kind of alluded to some of it. I have done my homework on this issue. We have gone up there for 18 years, 4 or 5 uncles, my cousins. I have my 5 children here. I hunted last year between 25 and 30 days. I went into the woods one day alone by myself. So they go with me. Usually it's 2 of them with me, okay? So if we lose Cheatham, where do we hunt? Okay, two things that Mr. Kirk did not share. After the EHD outbreak, for 2 seasons, Randy Cromer allowed doe harvest to continue. I had personal conversations with him. Stop this. There are no deer up here. You're continuing to let the deer that did survive be shot. The data on the front page absolutely proves that. Okay, that's sourced by the TWRA. So in 2009, he restricted doe harvest. So you had the hunters who knew that, well, there's no deer up here, so we're going to leave. Now the contingency of hunters who are meat hunters knew that they couldn't shoot a deer during gun season or muzzleloader. They left. Randy Cromer retired in 2015. Eric Tummins took over, and he did the absolute worst thing you could do up there, was he restricted access to the game reserve, and I mean severely, okay? When asked why he did that, to improve hunting. When pressed on the issue, why did you do this? To improve hunting, okay? So we have places that Randy would allow you to go all the way to the back of these roads and hunt undisturbed by other people, and there is good hunting up there right now, okay? So we're a large contingency, and this whole group that we have called you all are up here to speak. We never requested for him to close access to the game reserve, ever. You know, my recommendation is, I'm convinced, allow does to be harvested, open access up to the game reserve again, and I promise you the deer hunters will come back, because the data proves that. When those both were the case, look at the numbers prior to 2007. Those were actually, both of those, you could kill does, you could hunt the entire game reserve, get to it by motorized vehicle, and the data proves that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Danny Sparkman, I live in Nolensville, Tennessee, and I'm part of the group. We've been going up there, like you said, for years and years. And if you close it down to quota, I have no place to hunt. And if I don't get chosen, I don't get chosen for 2 years. I don't get to hunt for 2 years. And like he said, the roads, they need to be opened up. From where we park to where I have to hunt is almost a half a mile. Where if the road was completely open, I could be there in 10 minutes, maybe 15. Just, it needs to stay open, no quota hunt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spark. Next.
Mr. Holbrook, I talked to you. My name is Barry Sparkman. I live in Antioch. I've been going up there a lot longer than my brother and my nephews. I started going up there in late '93. I camped out my very first time with my son in a tent in '94, and from that point, we started, and it kind of grew. If you ever been to a football, your favorite college football game, and that day that you go and that hype of the game, that's the way it is on Friday, the day before the muzzleload starts. We get up there and everybody is full of, you know, get the camp put up and get a fire going, get ready to take our tree stands out. I don't know how many years I have left to hunt. I've got a few issues, but my son and my grandchildren, and these are my great nieces and nephews, I'd like to know that they have a place every year that they can actually go and hunt and do the same thing that I've been doing for since '94. So I do appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Barton.
Hello, my name is Derek Sparkman, and that's my dad. This year will mark the 25th year that I would have camped up at Cheatham. And I just ask y'all to consider keeping the hunting season statewide, because this has become a tradition for the entire family. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Any other public comment on WMAs? Director Carter.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know when you want to hear some other possible thoughts on Cheatham, whether that's today or tomorrow, but I know they're trying to rework some of their ideas that they brought to you before, so.
Absolutely.
So
Mr. Woods.
two things. I know I'm one of many up here who was thinking that y'all are the most well-behaved young people ever. We're so thrilled that you're here. Oh my goodness, we've all been going, who are these young people? So thank you for introducing them.
Dad must be a coach or something.
I know, right?
There you go.
High school principal. Oh, thank
That's
you for
what
your
it is.
leadership, even more so. So we're thrilled y'all are here. So two things. I'm really interested in finding a solution here. What I don't have is a solution to make a motion on right now. And so I guess I want to seek permission from the chairman. I'd love for them to have time to be thoughtful about giving us something, but I'm uncomfortable with just sort of throwing something on the wall because it may be intended to actually help the families who are users of the property and have a negative unintended consequence. So I'd love to be able to do that tomorrow, but I know that we'll be out of this committee, or maybe we won't. So I will follow your lead, but I'm struggling here because I'd love to find a balance, but I don't have the answer in this moment right this second.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. I don't know which one of y'all is first. He's
Go ahead, Bill, if you want to.
I might suggest,
If it's okay with you.
same way Jamie is, if the agency guys are looking at this, we've been at this for over 2 hours, maybe we take a little break and give them a little time, and they might come back with something in 10 or 15 minutes.
I'm gonna allow you to make a motion if you want to, or amendment, and or we can go back into committee in the morning. So.
I'd love the opportunity to do it in the morning, just so we don't, but I would totally defer to the rest of the wildlife committee on this. I hate to put them on the clock in an hour.
I agree.
But, and I want it to be the best proposal possible, and so I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would like for the wildlife committee to meet in the morning first.
I agree. I think it gives everyone time to think about it and prepare some ideas, and we can discuss it tomorrow.
I know they're gonna have to come back, but we have heard their comments. So it's not gonna, you guys are welcome to come back tomorrow, but, we've already heard the comments, so.
But we've heard you loud and clear. I don't feel as though they need to feel motivated to come back. You don't have, we've heard what you've had to say, and I agree with Commissioner Woodson that we're looking for a solution.
Commissioner Stroud?
That's what I wanted to say. I think it's way too important. And you do have a beautiful family, and it means a lot. But this hunting thing is important, and I get that. And I think we're right by taking our time here. Let's not jump on anything. We heard you guys. And the solution should be thought out, and so it benefits everything. And jumping in here, the next hour or two, I think is a danger for getting what we want right. And just my opinion, you don't have to show back up. We get that. We heard you. And I personally, and I'm sure there's we all feel the same, we're going to do our very best to make sure that we get the best out of what we need to do for everyone, okay?
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
All I want to say is if I could get a copy of what was handed out when we ended up with the copy originals and not the actual copy, so I don't have what was handed out. That's all.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on, Director Carter, do you have anything else pertinent to WMAs? Okay. All right. I have a motion, an amended motion. So all of those in favor of Proclamation 18-06 as amended, let it be known by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Let's take a break. Everybody get back. Let's try to be in by 3:30. Thank you.
Can we make that a really hard 3:30? Because let's start right then. We got a long way to go.